The Carter home, a small yet cozy house at the edge of town, basked in the warm glow of late afternoon sunlight. The kitchen smelled of garlic and tomatoes as Adam Carter stood at the stove, stirring a bubbling pot of spaghetti sauce. The faint hum of soft jazz from the radio mixed with the sound of crayons scratching paper. At the table, his 9-year-old daughter Mia was deep in concentration. Her curls framed her face as she leaned over her drawing, her tongue poking out slightly, a habit Adam found both endearing and hilarious. "Dad," she called suddenly, waving the paper in the air. "Look at this." Adam turned, smiling as he wiped his hands on a towel. "Let's see it, Picasso." Mia grinned, holding up the drawing. It was a cheerful sketch of 2 stick figures under a vibrant rainbow. One figure was clearly her, with wild brown curls, and the other, unmistakably Adam, stood tall with exaggerated muscles. In his stick hand was an enormous ice cream cone. "Oh, so I'm the ice cream guy now?" Adam teased, kneeling beside her. "What happened to me being the superhero, Dad?" "You are a superhero," Mia giggled, pointing at the muscles. "But superheroes eat ice cream too." Adam laughed and kissed the top of her head. "Fair point. Spaghetti first, though." Mia wrinkled her nose playfully, but obediently set the drawing aside. Moments like these had become sacred to Adam. After losing his wife to cancer 3 years ago, every second with Mia felt like a gift. She was his anchor, his joy, his reason to keep moving forward. That evening, as Adam washed the dishes, Mia tugged at his sleeve. "Dad, can I go to the park? Everyone's going to be there, please." Adam hesitated, glancing at the clock. "Just for an hour," he relented, "and promise me you'll be careful." "I promise," Mia said, beaming as she grabbed her pink backpack and skipped toward the door. Adam watched her leave, the sunlight catching the vibrant colors of her outfit. She was wearing her favorite yellow sweater and pink sneakers, the ones she refused to take off no matter how worn they got. "Be safe, Mia," he whispered to himself. He didn't know it would be the last time he'd see her smile. The golden hues of sunset filtered through the living room blinds as Adam sat at the kitchen table, trying to focus on a stack of bills. The house was quiet, too quiet. He glanced at the clock for the 10th time in as many minutes. Mia should have been home by now. "She's fine," Adam muttered to himself, "just a little late." He stood, pacing toward the window. The park was only a few blocks away, and it was always filled with other families. Yet, a nagging worry began to creep into his chest. Just as he reached for his keys to check on her, the phone rang, startling him. "Hello?" he answered, his voice tight. "Mr. Carter?" A woman's voice, calm but professional, came through the line. "This is Officer Davis. There's been an incident involving your daughter, Mia. We need you to come to County General Hospital immediately." Adam's breath caught in his throat. "What happened? Is she okay?" The officer hesitated. "Please, just come as quickly as you can." The phone slipped from Adam's hand as dread flooded his body. Without thinking, he grabbed his keys and bolted out the door, barely locking it behind him. The drive to the hospital was a blur of stoplights and honking horns. By the time he arrived, his hands were trembling so badly he struggled to push open the emergency room doors. Inside, the sterile smell of antiseptic hit him like a wall. Nurses and doctors moved briskly, their faces masks of professionalism. A woman in uniform approached him, her expression somber. "Mr. Carter, I'm Officer Davis," she said. "The doctor will explain everything." Adam followed her down a corridor, his heart pounding in his chest. A doctor in a white coat stood waiting, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "Mr. Carter," she began gently, "I'm so sorry. We did everything we could, but—" Her words blurred as Adam's world shattered. He barely heard her explanation. A fall from the jungle gym, a severe head injury, nothing they could do. "She was gone before the paramedics arrived," the doctor finished softly. Adam staggered backward, his vision swimming. He gripped the edge of a chair to steady himself, shaking his head as if he could deny the truth. "No," he whispered, "that's not possible. She was fine this morning. She was—" The officer placed a hand on his shoulder. "I'm so sorry for your loss, Mr. Carter." Adam sank into the chair, the weight of her words pressing down on him like a mountain. His vibrant, joyful Mia, who had been laughing and drawing at the kitchen table just hours ago, was gone. Mia's funeral was arranged within days, a whirlwind of decisions and formalities that Adam could barely process. Friends and neighbors trickled into the small funeral home to pay their respects, offering hushed condolences and awkward pats on the back. Adam nodded politely, but their words felt distant and hollow. Mia's tiny white coffin sat in the center of the room, adorned with yellow flowers, her favorite. Adam stood beside it, staring down at her lifeless form. She looked peaceful, as though she were merely asleep, dressed in her favorite yellow sweater. But something was wrong. Adam's eyes caught faint bruises on Mia's arms and legs, bruises that hadn't been mentioned in the autopsy report. He leaned closer, his chest tightening as he noticed another detail, dirt beneath her fingernails. He frowned. Mia had always been meticulous about cleanliness, often refusing to eat without washing her hands first. He couldn't reconcile the image of his careful, tidy daughter with the dirt now clinging to her nails. His sister Naomi approached, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Adam, you've been standing here a long time. Maybe you should take a break." "Naomi," Adam whispered, his voice trembling. "She didn't have this dirt before. Why is it there? And the bruises? They don't make sense." Naomi hesitated, glancing nervously toward the funeral workers standing nearby. "Adam, it's probably nothing. Bodies change during preparation. You've been through so much. Maybe it's just your grief talking." Adam shook his head. Something's not right. Later, as he sat quietly in a corner of the funeral home, Adam overheard two workers talking in hushed tones. "Let's just make it quick," one said. "They won't notice. People like that never ask questions." Adam froze, his fists clenching at his sides. People like that. The word stung, carrying an undertone he couldn't ignore. Were they talking about him? About Mia? By the time Adam returned home that evening, exhaustion and grief had given way to a gnawing sense of unease. He lay in bed, replaying every detail in his mind. The rushed explanation at the hospital, the bruises, the dirt, the callous laughter of the funeral workers. As the first rays of dawn filtered through his window, Adam sat up abruptly. He couldn't let it go. He couldn't ignore the feeling that something had been hidden from him. He grabbed his keys and drove to an electronics store, his mind racing. After browsing the aisles, he purchased a small hidden camera, the kind that could be concealed easily. Back at home, Adam carefully examined the coffin lining. His hands trembled as he tucked the camera into place, ensuring it would capture everything inside. The act felt intrusive, even wrong, but his instincts overpowered his guilt. "I'm sorry, baby," he whispered as tears blurred his vision. "I just need to know the truth." The coffin was lowered into the ground that afternoon. Adam stood silently at the edge of the grave, his heart heavy but his resolve unwavering. That night he set up the camera's live feed on his computer. At first, the screen showed only darkness, the closed interior of Mia's coffin. Hours passed, and nothing happened. Just as Adam began to doubt himself, the screen flickered. A faint shadow moved across the frame, so subtle that he almost dismissed it. Then, a soft scraping sound echoed through his headphones, like nails against wood. His breath caught in his throat as he leaned closer. Moments later, muffled voices broke the silence. "Just finish it. No one's going to notice." Adam's blood ran cold. Adam sat frozen, his eyes glued to the screen. His chest tightened with every replay of the footage, the faint scraping, the unsettling movement, and the whispered voices. "Just finish it. No one's going to notice." His heart pounded as a mix of grief, rage, and confusion churned within him. Who were these people? Why were they near Mia's coffin? And what were they doing? By morning, Adam knew he couldn't stay silent. He copied the footage onto a flash drive and called Naomi over. She arrived within the hour, her face still pale with grief. "What is it, Adam? You sounded urgent," she asked, setting her purse on the kitchen counter. Adam didn't say a word. Instead, he played the footage, watching as Naomi's eyes widened in horror. "Oh my God," she whispered, her hand covering her mouth. "Adam, this can't be real." "It is," Adam said firmly, "and I'm going to find out what it means." "You can't handle this on your own," Naomi said, her voice trembling. "What are you going to do, go to the police?" Adam nodded. "I have to. They need to see this." That afternoon, Adam walked into the police station, the flash drive clutched tightly in his hand. He explained everything to the officer at the desk, who looked skeptical but passed the case along to a detective. Hours later, the detective, a tired-looking man in his 40s, returned the flash drive to Adam. His expression was unreadable. "This doesn't prove anything," the detective said. "The audio is too faint, and the shadows could be from camera interference. It's not enough to warrant reopening the case." Adam's frustration boiled over. "You didn't even watch the whole thing. Those voices, they're tampering with my daughter's body." The detective sighed, his tone growing firmer. "I'm sorry, Mr. Carter. I understand you're grieving, but I suggest you focus on that instead of chasing conspiracy theories." Adam left the station in a daze, anger and despair battling within him. They had dismissed him, just as he feared they would. Later that evening, as Adam sat alone in the dim glow of his computer screen, Naomi returned. "Adam," she said cautiously, "we need another plan. If the police won't help, maybe someone else will." "Like who?" Adam asked, his voice weary. "The media," Naomi said after a moment. "If we can get someone to listen, someone with a platform, maybe they'll take this seriously." Adam hesitated. Going public felt risky, but it was clear the authorities weren't going to help. He looked at the screen one more time, Mia's memory spurring him forward. "Let's do it," he said finally. The next morning, Adam sat at his kitchen table drafting emails to local journalists. He attached the footage and explained his suspicions, pouring his heart into every word. Hours passed with no response. Doubt began creeping in. Maybe no one would care. Late that evening, his phone buzzed. A young journalist named Rachel Monroe had replied. "I watched your footage," her email read. "There's something here. Let's meet." The following day, Adam and Naomi met Rachel at a small cafe on the outskirts of town. Rachel was younger than Adam had expected, but her sharp eyes and quick demeanor gave him hope. She pulled out a notepad as they sat down. "First, let me say how sorry I am for your loss," Rachel began. "I've looked into this funeral home before. There have been whispers about misconduct, but nothing concrete. Your footage changes that." "They're hiding something," Adam said firmly. "I know it," Rachel nodded. "We'll need more than the footage to prove it. If this is going public, we'll need testimony, records, something irrefutable." Rachel started digging into the funeral home's history, uncovering a disturbing pattern of complaints. Families had reported missing personal items, rush services, and inconsistencies in embalming reports. Most cases had been quietly settled or dismissed. Meanwhile, Adam and Naomi began reaching out to former employees. After days of dead ends, they found Ben, a man who had worked at the funeral home for several years before quitting under mysterious circumstances. When Adam and Naomi met Ben at a diner late one night, he looked anxious, his eyes darting around the room. "I don't know why you think I can help," Ben said, fidgeting with his coffee cup. "Because you were there," Adam replied, leaning forward. "You know what they're hiding. Please. This is about my daughter." Ben hesitated, his hands shaking. Finally, he sighed. "They don't care about families. It's all about profit. They reuse caskets, rush embalming jobs, and sometimes even switch bodies around to save space. If your daughter's body was bruised or moved, it's because they were covering something up." Adam's stomach churned. "Why would they think they could get away with this?" Ben's voice dropped to a whisper. "Because they think families like yours won't ask questions." Naomi froze. "Families like ours." Ben nodded, his expression grim. "They assume black families won't push back. They think you'll just accept what they tell you." The words hit Adam like a punch to the gut. His grief transformed into determination. "Will you go on record?" he asked. Ben hesitated, his fear evident. "I'll think about it," he muttered, before quickly leaving the diner. Rachel continued her investigation, uncovering financial ties between the funeral home and local hospitals. It appeared the business had been profiting from under-the-table deals for unclaimed bodies, cutting corners to maximize their bottom line. When Rachel published her first article, the reaction was immediate. The story gained traction online, sparking outrage across the community. Families began coming forward with their own stories of negligence and mistreatment. But with the attention came danger. One morning, Adam woke to find the words "Let It Go" spray-painted across his garage door. His phone buzzed constantly with anonymous calls, some of them leaving threatening messages. Naomi was visibly shaken. "Adam, this is getting dangerous. Maybe we should stop." Adam stared at the vandalized garage, his jaw tightening. Number. "They want us to stop because we're getting too close. I won't back down. Not for Mia." As Rachel's articles continued to make waves, the community's outrage grew louder. Protests formed outside the funeral home, with people holding signs that read, "Justice for Mia" and "End Funeral Neglect." Adam found himself at the center of a movement he never intended to lead, but he embraced it with unwavering resolve. Meanwhile, Rachel dug deeper into the funeral home's financial records, uncovering damning evidence of systemic malpractice. Under-the-table deals with local hospitals had allowed the funeral home to handle unclaimed bodies in bulk, cutting corners to maximize profits. Embalming processes were rushed, caskets were reused, and bodies were sometimes switched without the family's knowledge. "This isn't just negligence," Rachel told Adam during a late-night strategy meeting at his house. "This is a business model built on exploitation." The media pressure finally forced the police to reopen Mia's case. They called Adam in for an official interview, but the process was slow and filled with red tape. The funeral home's lawyers fought back fiercely, denying all allegations and framing Adam as a grieving father consumed by paranoia. Adam, however, refused to be silenced. With Rachel's help, he filed a lawsuit against the funeral home. The case became a lightning rod for public outrage, drawing national attention. Ben, the former employee, finally agreed to testify. When Adam and Naomi met him again, he was visibly nervous but resolute. "I'm done being scared," Ben said. "If they want to come after me, fine. But people need to know what they did." In court, Ben's testimony was explosive. He described in detail the funeral home's practices, reusing caskets, mishandling bodies, and falsifying records to cover up mistakes. "They told us no one would notice," Ben said, his voice steady. "Especially not families like his." He gestured toward Adam. "They counted on people being too grief-stricken to ask questions." The defense tried to discredit Ben, pointing to his termination and suggesting he had a personal vendetta. But his testimony, combined with Rachel's evidence, painted a damning picture of corruption and negligence. The camera footage Adam had captured was played in court. The faint whispers filled the room. "Just finish it. No one's going to notice." The jury listened intently, their expressions growing more serious as the case unfolded. Adam watched them closely, hoping they could see the truth. The courtroom was silent as the jury filed back into their seats. Adam sat at the plaintiff's table, his hands gripping the edge of the wooden surface, his heart racing. Naomi sat beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm, offering silent support. Across the room, the funeral home's legal team sat stiffly, their carefully crafted confidence showing cracks. The foreperson stood, holding the verdict in trembling hands. She glanced at the judge, who gave a slight nod. "We, the jury, find the defendants guilty of gross negligence, tampering with remains, and falsifying records," she said clearly. Adam exhaled sharply, a rush of relief and emotion surging through him. Naomi squeezed his arm, tears streaming down her face. Across the courtroom, the funeral home's lawyers exchanged defeated glances, while murmurs filled the gallery. The judge's voice cut through the noise. "The court orders the defendants to pay damages to the Carter family. Furthermore, the directors of the funeral home will face criminal charges for their misconduct." Outside, a crowd had gathered, their signs raised high. As Adam exited the courthouse, a wave of cheers erupted. Reporters surged forward, their microphones thrust toward him, but Adam paid them no mind. His focus was on the sense of justice, not victory, but a step toward making things right. Later that evening, Adam visited Mia's grave. The cemetery was quiet, bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun. He knelt by her headstone, his fingers tracing her name etched into the granite. "We did it, baby," he whispered, his voice breaking. "We made them see you. They'll never hurt anyone else again." Behind him, Naomi stood silently, holding a bouquet of daisies, Mia's favorite. She approached, placing the flowers gently at the base of the headstone. "She'd be so proud of you, Adam," she said softly. In the weeks that followed, Adam channeled his grief into action. With Rachel's help, he founded Mia's Light Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to holding funeral homes accountable and supporting grieving families. The foundation became a beacon of hope, a symbol of Mia's legacy. Rachel continued to report on the case, her articles pushing for legislative changes. Her efforts, along with Adam's foundation, led to stricter regulations in the funeral industry, ensuring greater transparency and accountability. One afternoon, as Adam cleaned Mia's room, he found the drawing she had started that day, the two of them standing under a rainbow, with him holding an enormous ice cream cone. Beneath it, in her uneven handwriting, she had written, "Always together, Dad." Adam framed the drawing and hung it in the living room, where it became a daily reminder of her light and the fight she had inspired. Standing beneath the golden hues of a summer evening, Adam felt a bittersweet peace. Mia's loss would always ache, but her memory had sparked change. She had inspired a movement, and her love would continue to guide him. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Adam whispered, "Thank you, Mia, for everything."
Subscribe and press the bell icon so that you never miss the amazing video.